from your experience, what are some of the good implementations of HRV and what are some of the bad ones? Because they're both available, given that there is so much happening with HRV in this world right now.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. Because, as we talked about, we don't know necessarily the value of truly measuring nocturnal HRV. We don't know the value of various things. And truly, right? We have an idea and we kind of are going with it and start to be able to, as we apply it, we start to be able to kind of formulate the science around it and what we can possibly do and think of different ways to be able to do that. When it comes to HRV variability, and this is, I think, the biggest reason why we came up with the Foundations of HRV Variability course, is that you cannot look at HRV in regards to a silo, right? And this is originally what was very, very frustrating with, helping people early on with HRV variability in particular, is that people think that it's purely to do that if I could train hard today or not, right? Readiness for physical activity, right? And I remember these questions all the time of saying, I exercise very, very hard. I had a rest day yesterday and my HRV is worse today. How does that make sense? And I go, well, you could have, had McDonald's and pizza for your food. You could have had fights with various people. You could have gone to bed later. You messed up your circadian rhythm. Like, there's so many other factors that kind of come into when it comes to understanding heart rate variability in regards to stress management and using this biomarker appropriately, right? So I think using it in the silo, we also had at the other end of the spectrum where someone was doing breathing training, right? And really focused on doing 10 weeks of breathing in particular. And, doing this, it's like, well, why isn't my HRV improving? As I started to go into it, they eat fast food primarily for their main meals. They're night shift workers, so their sleep schedule is all over the map. They're not physically active at all. They have pre-existing health conditions, and it's like, okay, well, there's significantly more factors that are coming in. So I think the poor application of HRV variability is when you start to think of that this equals that, right? We're saying looking into a silo that it's purely for physical performance. It's purely for stress management. It's purely for this. And you can't necessarily do that. And this is where I think you have to look at all these factors of what's going on. And I think it's probably one of the biggest reasons why heart rate variability hasn't been very much adopted into a lot of medical clinics and a lot of clinics in particular. The reason was because there's so many things that can affect it, and that's the number one question that when I do consultations with medical doctors or other practitioners like physical therapists, osteopaths, massage therapists, I go, okay, well, my client's HRV based on standardized data is lower than it should be. What do I do? Right? Well, I have to know your patient inside and out to be able to prioritize those factors. And so I think the best application is looking at this as more of, if you introduce something into your life, whether it's a change of diet, whether it's an exercise plan, whether it's a journaling, or starting to do more social events. What is the individual impact of changing the various aspects of my behavior? Right? If I change this behavior, how does this equate into what's going on? Right? I'll give you an example. I absolutely hate running. It is, there's no such thing for me as a runner's high. I despise every step that I gotta go for it. But HRV wise, subjectively, all the markers that come from my psychosocial assessment, as well as from when it comes to wearable products, it is a significant benefit to me. I feel better. My energy levels are higher. I sleep better. All these things come in impact of having to be able to introduce, running. And so I use that saying, hey, but you know what? I do not like it very much. I live by the beach, and so it's literally just a bunch of hills, so it makes it even worse. But I know the value of doing that intervention as much as I don't like it, but it's of value to me. It's enough of a value that I see the benefit of doing it, and it's just like any other intervention. And the number one question that we get from people is, when they introduce something that they've already done, right? So say, people have some psychosocial aspects, they lack emotional regulation, and we say, one of the best ways to do that scientifically is through journaling. Well, I've done journaling, right? Is this gonna be a benefit to me, right? I don't know if it is. People will journal, people meditate, didn't make a difference. They don't know because it's purely based on subjective. This is where, again, I find the value of looking at heart rate variability is that we see this now in people because of the ability to get these passive captures of these wearable devices, where we start to see 50% to 100% improvement in someone's nocturnal heart rate variability metrics in as short as 4 to 6 weeks in regards to introducing something as simple as journaling, right? I have an example of a client that I have that exactly is what happened to her, right? By her being journaling in 4-week time, we're able to show a significant improvement in her nocturnal capture, literally from just introducing journaling and giving the purpose of why journaling is there. Why are you journaling in particular? Start doing it and be able to do it. Now, she didn't like it before. She now sees the value of actually doing it, so she'll dedicate the time in order for that to happen. So I see that the value of putting emphasis in regards to if you have to change your behavior for your health and well-being, is this intervention worth it for you?
But I think what I noticed is that what you're essentially saying is that simplistic definition of HRV can often be misconstrued into many different ways, just like data, right? So you can torture data enough to make it become anything you like, and that's the fallacy of this space. Basically, what's going to happen is that for the next few years, as we develop the platform and as a lot of data platforms around human health develop, people are going to believe what they want to believe, because often health is your own definition of health. It's not somebody else's definition. Whether you're healthy or not is your own understanding, and a lot of people would actually say that, oh, my HRV dipped, so I do feel in a certain way, or my HRV rose, I do feel in a certain way, whereas these two things might lack a lot of context. So having the context is actually probably equal or probably even more important in many cases, and it's really like a compass, it's not like a map. Before I stepped into this podcast, somebody asked me, and I was speaking to a friend, and the friend wasn't aware of the HRV space, and the friend actually asked me that why in this entire world would you actually track HRV out of everything else? You have so many things to do in life. So I have few answers, but I'm sure that I wouldn't have an answer that'll be as compelling and as interesting as what you would have. So I would love to hear your word.
Yeah, it's funny. It's as I do this more and more about tracking HRV with people, is that it's for a specific person, right? Some people, like my wife, for instance, just wouldn't do it. Like, it's not motivating to her. She doesn't necessarily want the information. She goes more about how her body feels and things like that. So it takes the right type of person to be able to kind of, get in the space of heart rate variability. But if you're in that space of wanting to be able to be effective, be efficient, be able to perform at the highest level possible, making sure that you're doing everything to, to live a healthier, better life, right? And you have your interest in being able to do that. You're spending time of looking at am I on the right food? Am I, doing the right things with friends? Am I doing that type of stuff? I find it that to be to the right person. So, why would you want to be able to monitor, HRV? And to me, it's to look at effectiveness, because again, like I said, we're all busy. We can all eat better. We can all do these things, but to be able to figure out what are the biggest impacts to my health and well-being that would make that I should spend time doing comparatively to others, right? Like, sometimes I see people that are just hyper-focused on their sleep, and I completely understand the value of sleep, but they're already doing like 93, 94% of what you're supposed to be doing already. And they're so obsessed about how can I get these last couple things, where it's like, maybe the priority isn't there for you. Maybe the value is not necessarily focusing on going from a 93 to a 97% of doing everything perfectly when it comes to sleep. But what are the other factors of your health and well-being that are possibly limiting what's going on, that can make sure that you live a long, healthy, lasting life? So it's about, to me, with HRV, why would somebody do it, is to put your focus on specific areas that improve your health and well-being.
That is a fascinating aspect. Why should you live well? And I would love to add to it that why should you explore? Like, why go to Mars? Why go to the moon? Right? It's how there's no need, but it's how humans are built, potentially, right? And I think this has been a fantastic journey in terms of understanding more about such an interesting biomarker. And of course, through this platform and otherwise as well, we would love to figure out ways to partner and bring science to the space. This is probably one of the most interesting phases of human health, where engineers, sports scientists, doctors, and general people who also call themselves biohackers are actually trying to figure out what is the future of human health.